Ladies and gentlemen, you can see from your programmes we've got a very packed list, and I must say thank you to all the speakers who give their time so generously so that you get a full flavour of what is going on in the world at the moment, and we all know that things aren't good. And without further ado, the first gentleman speaking, who some of you may know, the farming fraternity ought to know, he's Clive Edwards. I can see Clive needs no introduction, but he will introduce himself, I'm sure. Clive is I would say, builder come farmer, but he's done such wonderful work with using common and natural law. So I'm going to hand you over to Clive.
Thank you very much, Liz. Hello, everyone. I've prepared a bit of a talk here today. As you know, I like to come to these events and bring well, I'm not used to bringing glasses, so bear with me. I like to come to these events and bring some evidence, and I normally prepare a talk, and so people can follow along online. That's the website if you'd like to follow along. If you go to the drop-down menu there and find the events page, click on the Great Resist, and you'll find the webpage, the script that I'm just about to read from. So yeah, without further ado, I've got 20 minutes, which isn't the greatest amount of time to get into the actual nuts and bolts of law and governance. So I'm going to have to skim across, but my website is full of all the evidence and everything you'll need if you'd like to investigate things a little bit further. So, this information, the Great Resist, that's an interesting word, and this information will not only help you resist, but it will also help you to win against government overreach. Now, those are bold claims, but I feel I'm qualified to make them, having risked bankruptcy, imprisonment, not only to resist and take on the crown, but also importantly to win. And there's a lot. That's a big thing. Like, I've taken on the crown, and you can be successful if you get your arguments right. My story is one whereby my entire existence depended on me being successful against the crown. I had to know how the system works to avoid prison. I was looking at 9 enforcement notices, and it sounds pretty trivial, like a planning matter. Most people run into the planning department. But a planning enforcement notice is actually an indictable offence. And for planning matters, there's some familiar faces here I know that are involved in planning discussions with their council. Those fines are unlimited fines if it goes to Crown Court. And if you don't pay the fines or demolish what you built, you can end up in prison. There's a few famous examples of that. So I need you to know how the system of law and governance works so that we can avoid government control and so that our children inherit a better world than the world which the global governments currently wish to create. To resist means to stand against, to oppose, and that is a perfect word that defines my own journey through law and governance in standing against government and the Crown. Because of my own opposition to the Crown, I know how to successfully resist. And now I aim to help others in making a stand against immoral government policies. To know something means to understand as a fact or truth. The definition of the word means to experience, to live through. In other words, to know something to be true as a fact, you have to experience it, to live through it. And that's what happened to me. My own journey in understanding in standing in opposition to government when I built my family a farm at Somerset without permission to do so from the local council, and I told them that I was going to do it beforehand as well. I didn't want to go down the route of hiding things. I thought I'd write to them and say, listen, I'm going to build this farm. If you've got a problem with it, let me know. And they never did. So I cracked on. Resisting government policies can be done, even policies with serious consequences, like planning control. I'm sure there's a few policies on people's minds now that are, with the recent developments over the last few days with digital ID and things, that are making people think about government policy. They issued me with 9 planning enforcement notices, as I said, because I was building the farm without their permission. This planning battle led me on a 15-year journey into the heart of the legal and court systems. In the end, I became so good at resisting that my local council did not wish to take me to court, despite drafting in an expert in planning law as a last-ditch attempt to prosecute me. For those that are interested in my story, you can hear me explain it on my YouTube channel, Clive Edwards, Walking the Talk. You'll find me on YouTube. My own journey has given me a unique insight into law and governance, a journey that has led me to understand and know very well how the system of law and governance works against us. You are all here today with the stated aim of resisting, and that is to be applauded. There are many government policies that absolutely must be stood against. But first, I have an important question to ask. If you are standing against and in opposition to government policy, just where does that leave you standing? You cannot stand against something and at the same time be in it. That's not logical. In other words, can you really be resisting something and be involved in the thing that you are resisting? No, you cannot. Albert Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem with the same level of consciousness that created it. So truthfully and logically, to resist government policy, you will have to be outside of it to be against it. But do you know where to stand? Do you know how to win? Through my own experience, I not only know where to stand, but I also know how to win. My mission here today is to explain to you where you need to stand and what you need to know to win, to be successful resistors. To win, you have to know how the system of law and governance is set up to govern and control us. If you do not understand the game or its rules, how can you possibly be successful? Clearly then, it is imperative that we understand the system that we are involved in and wish to resist, to oppose. So how did I win? How did I resist and stand against 9 planning enforcement notices, which, as I've said, are indictable offences, carrying the risk of prison? I had to learn to understand how we're being governed, and then I had to know from learned and lived experience. I could not rely on opinions. I had to rely upon facts, evidence, and the law. You cannot stand against and resist the crown armed with only an opinion. As some of you may know, for these types of talks, I always like to bring the evidence to substantiate my claims. You should not have to take my word for anything. What I'm explaining here today is not my opinion. It is all easily evidenced, and my website, capillariwave.com, evidences much about what I will speak about today. Did you know that there are only 2 systems of law and governance mankind can exist under? Just 2. Do you know what they are? These are important questions when it comes to resisting. If you're going to stand against one of the 2 systems, you had best know where that places you at law. Likewise, for those who do not oppose and resist the government, it is important to know who and what you are in bed with. To explain further, on earth there are only 2 systems of law and governance that you can exist under. You're either under the governance of man or the governance of God, and that's it. That's the 2 systems of law and governance. Man's civil, Roman, legal system versus God's lawful one. But you do have a choice of which one you'd like to be under. We've all got that choice. You're governed by consent, as they say. You either belong to the state as one of its citizens, or you belong to God as one of his people. So to clarify, at law you are either a citizen of the state or a people under God. That's it, one or the other. One is the highest position that you can be in at law, and one is the lowest position you can be in at law, as a commoner, as one of the electorate. And I'll get onto evidence some of this in a minute as well. I wonder if you can guess which one's the highest, being one of the citizens or being one of God's people. I think from the smiles around some of your faces, I think you know which one that is. As I said, I'll walk through the evidence of this shortly. I will now show you what these 2 separate jurisdictions look like right through the state governance, from king to your local council. So, the 2 jurisdictions on earth. Excuse me while I just grab a drink. So the 2 jurisdictions on earth, I termed it the crown versus God, because if you're a state citizen, you're under the crown. When they say jump, just ask how high. The two jurisdictions on earth are for the people under God on the one hand, and the citizens of the state under the UK government. You cannot be a people under God if you are a state citizen. That is not how law works. The state citizens bear all of the liability and are the lowest position at law you can be in. They are what is known as the electorate, or commoners, belonging to the House of Commons. The Bible says it like this: no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold on to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. This is why all of the main offices of state have two roles. These two roles evidence the jurisdiction of government under man and government under God. This is why the king has two crowns of office. The St. Edward's crown of God. Oh, I need to look over the top of these. The King Edward's crown of God and the imperial Roman crown of state. This is why judges swear two oaths of office, one oath to the office of state and the other to serve God. That's worth bearing in mind because there's a maxim of law that says judges judge for God. And any of you that's run into problems with the crown will be before one of these judges that judge for God, that understand what I'm explaining to you here. This is why a police officer is also a police constable. So the dual roles again. Is the same individual, but he or she has two roles. The office of constable comes with an oath to protect God's people and property. The police officer is there to enforce state policy against the crowned citizens. That's his role. The legal system is a fake copy of the biblical system. The biblical system of law is perfection. That's why man's government just copied it and swapped out Christ and put man in place. We'll get to that in a minute. So, on the legal side, King Charles is known as the father of the nation. And when I was researching this stuff, I was like, that's interesting. He said, if he's the father, who's his missus? And turns out the Church of England is Mother Church. So the Church of England is your mother, and King Charles is your father if you're a state citizen. That makes you infants, wards of the state. Because on the biblical side, we all know our Father who art in heaven. Christ's church is Mother Church. And on God's side, so you're a ward of the state on the legal side, and on God's side, you're children of God. So they just copy and invert the biblical system. So God the Father, yeah, we'll make King Charles. Who's mother? Christ, yeah, we'll have the Church of England. They got children there, yeah, they'll be our wards of state. We'll get them We'll get to tell them exactly what to do in their lives. So to evidence this, right the way down through state, your king, King Charles, wears two crowns of office. And now you might be starting to understand why there's these dual roles. Because there's only two jurisdictions that you can exist in as mankind. Either you're under man or you're under God, and that's it. So the king has got a crown called the St. Edward's crown, and that's the crown of God. He puts that on in a private ceremony at his coronation, as is described in the Bible as well. And he's also got, this word Roman keeps popping up, doesn't it? Civil law is Roman law. So that's why the king wears a Roman crown. His second crown is the imperial crown, and imperial means Roman. So if you're a citizen of the state, you're under Roman law, which would be interesting for some Christians, I'm sure. Judges swear two oaths of office. So a judge swears one oath to his state office, and the other oath is to God in that jurisdiction. Again, that's why I said police. A police constable is also a police officer. And this rolls down to your local councils. And this is what saved me. Understanding this information enabled me to build a farm in Somerset, and the council did not want to know. So, I've got on here, on this, for those following along online and in the audience at the website, I've evidenced a local two councils' constitutions. One is Mendip District Council's constitution, and one is Gravesend Borough Council's constitution. Now I'll just write, it was very hard, without a biblical perspective, it's very hard to notice these things in their constitutions, because otherwise, most people say at these events, at these protests, we're the people, you're here to serve the people. And yet they're saying that as state citizens. That's incorrect. That's not true. If you're a state citizen, you are not one of the people. That's impossible. So, with a biblical perspective, at least for me, I was able to understand and see in these councils' constitutions these two jurisdictions. And I'll read a section out now. It's very interesting what these councillors' duties are. It's not something whimsical. It's not something they should do on a Monday just to tick a box. It's their duty, what I'm about to read out now. It's very powerful. So, the main purpose of the job of a councillor: to represent the needs, priorities and aspirations of the electorate and, small little word but huge importance, and the people of Mendip. So that's in one section. So if there wasn't two jurisdictions, why do you need that word "and" in there? You're either the electorate or the people. It shouldn't matter. But they put that word "and" in there to delineate between the two jurisdictions. In another part of this, of the same constitution, Mendip, it says to represent the community and bring the views of the electorate and the people of Mendip into the council's decision-making process. With the interests identified within the ward and the ward as a whole. It's that little word again, but it delineates between the two sections of their ward. They've got a ward full of the electorate, and the ward as a whole includes those that don't vote, those that are people of God. When I started pointing this stuff out to Mendip District Council, I mean, don't get me wrong, they never had someone, I don't believe they've had someone come forward before and explain this to them. I might have been the first one, because I had to explain it to them a little bit. And anyway, they eventually got it and left me alone. That's just the truth of the matter. So I'll just point out some on Gravesend Borough Council's constitution. Now I find this amusing, hopefully you will too. So, this is down in Kent, I guess, Gravesend. Might be your neck of the woods, sir.
No, near London.
Right, over that way, okay. Anyway, so this is from Gravesend Borough, and this is evidenced on my website, so anyone can find it. Members of the Capillary Wave will be very familiar with this. So, to allow local people to have a real and informed say about issues that affect them. So here's the people over here. You lot can have a real and informed say. Right, let's have a look at this one over here. Right. Explain to the electors and council taxpayers reasons for particular policies and priorities. So they're asking over here, like, oh, how can we help you to get really involved in, yeah, this is what's happening, guys. That's what's happening. Live with it. This is all in their own constitutions. You know, these aren't my opinions. This is what, obviously, I've found out. And when I started, now a council, you can be an atheist councillor. It makes no difference to me. I don't need to quote the Bible at you. I can just pick up their Bible, which is their constitution, and quote it back at them. They might not believe me, but they will understand their own rules and laws. And that's what I had to do to enable me to build a farm down in Somerset, like I say, and they left me alone. It's not that I've escaped, that's why, it's not like I've found a legal loophole. This is law and governance. This is how things are. So, how do we... Yeah, so like I said, a commoner is a member of the third estate of the realm. A commoner is not a second-class citizen. So if you're one of the electorate, you're not a second-class citizen, you're a third-class citizen. To resist successfully against the crown, as I have done, you first need to turn back to being one of the people, whereby governments state in their own constitutions that they are accountable to you. They are not accountable to their state-owned citizens, the commoners. They're not accountable to you guys as citizens. That's not how it works. So, the legal system of the United Kingdom and Commonwealth is run under civil law. Civil law is Roman law. Civil law, by definition, means it's secularly organised. Secular means, and I quote, belonging to the state, the exclusion of belief in God from matters of ethics and morality. Of course, that all makes sense, doesn't it? There's the real jurisdiction over here. You've already got the governance of God. It already exists. They have to exclude God over here because they've replaced God with man. King Charles is the father over there. That's when all these things, these word definitions and the laws and constitutions all start to make sense. From a biblical perspective, you can see the bigger picture. We know it's immoral, don't we? We know governments are immoral. We can see it with our own eyes in the world today. I mean, if you can't see the governments are immoral in today's society, then I don't know where to start with that. Man's secular legal system is in opposition to Christ, and now you know why. It is lacking in a belief in God. It is immoral because it has replaced God at the helm with man. So in London today, there's an office of government called the Attorney General's Office. And he's called the Attorney General because to attorn means to turn from one Lord and go and serve another. That's what the word attorn means. So that's what you did as citizens. Those who were people attorned and became citizens of the state, belonging to the state. You're meant to belong over here. That is why there's a general in charge of all the attorneys. That office is called the Attorney General. This is why the Bible states that you cannot serve two masters. It only mentions two masters. Again, I've evidenced the two jurisdictions of state. This is why commoners, the council tax-paying electorate, are treated so badly, because they are turned. If you are still finding it hard to believe me, there is a definition. Here is the definition of district, and many of you will be familiar with district councils. I've just read the constitution of one district council, so this is what the word district means. Territory under the was that me? Territory under the jurisdiction of a lord or officer. So that's what attorn means. You attorn from one lord to serve another lord. The restraining of offenders' jurisdiction. It's a district within which the lord may take and withhold personal property, brackets distrain, for legal reasons. Anyone who's seen my video on those two farmers down near Egham will understand what this word district now means and how attorneys get treated. The Lord can turn up and take your property for legal reasons, which is quite disturbing. So, how to resist? How to stand against the secular? The legal system admits that the Bible is the infallible truth in their own Confession of Faith Ratification Act 1560. So the legal guys, there's no argument there. They all say, yeah, the Bible's true. And it says so in one of their acts of parliament. Infallible means exempt from error in judgment, knowledge, or opinion. Like, it's unquestionable. Whether you got what your guy's position on it is irrelevant to me. My adversary say that book is true. What I talk about is complete freedom from government. I don't mess about. I'm not trying to find a little rock I can hide under. I'm talking about freedom from UK government, not half measures. What I discuss at my website enables citizens to walk out of state control and return to the most powerful position that you can be in at Earth. That is, being one of the people. The council's own constitutions state that they are accountable to the people. That's me. I then held them to the words of their book of law, their constitution. It took some explaining because, like I said, I don't think that's happened to them before. So to go back to being one of the people, you've now got an explanation to make to one of the chief attorney who looks after all the attorneys. So the very first thing that you need to do to leave state control is to notify the state that you are revoking and rescinding the legal name from the electoral register. The electoral register is evidence of the fact that you've consented to that system. And if your name's on it, well, firstly, you can be called up for jury service, but more pressing, you can be called up for conscription to war as well. That name on that register is the evidence of your consent to that system. That is exactly what I did. First, I entitled myself from the state by writing to the Attorney General and rescinding and revoking my citizenship. And then I did not ask a UK government body for anything to do with my smallholding. I did not ask for any of their permissions, like planning. I have not registered my chickens. I used to have hundreds at one stage. I have not applied for, nor do I want any UK holding numbers, which all farms have to have a holding number. I have not applied for any grants or subsidies. Every UK farm pretty much would be a limited business as well. So farmers are some of the most controlled members of our society because actually they're quite powerful. That's why the government needs them out of the way. Because they grow the food, they can support a community, and that's why the government have got so many lassos around them. They've got a lot to untie. But it can be done. And I'm living proof that you can live outside that system. With very little, I had to stand my ground. The very definition of resist, I had to stand my ground and resist them. But now, down in Mendip at least, my local council, If someone else is coming behind me now and makes the same kind of arguments that I'm talking about here today, the door's been kicked off. They'll understand it now at the very least. I will finish. If I'm not tied to the political UK as one of its citizens, then its politics and politicians have no control over me. If I am under the Bible, then by definition I am under the infallible truth as one of the people, which is the highest position at law you can ever be in. Being one of the people, by definition, means that I am not a subject of the king. You cannot be one of the people and be a subject of an earthly king. The Bible forbids that at the very first commandment. Have no other gods before me. And that commandment's a small g God, which means an earthly king, judge or ruler. I will finish with a warning from the Book of Truth for those citizens who belong to the state, who are UK property, who are subjects of the king, who will be resisting and causing problems for the state that you said you wanted to be a part of. It's Ezra 7:26. And whosoever will not do the law of thy God and the law of the king, let judgment be executed speedily upon him, whether it be unto death, to banishment, or to confiscation of goods, or to imprisonment. Anyone that's ever had a bailiff's letter threatening to come and take your goods, it's called goods because of what it says in the Bible. And so the king's under orders. If you're under the king, you've already broke the first commandment from God. It said, don't be under another earthly king, mind you. You're mine. And we turned. We went to serve a king. So God's like, okay, you won't be under me. You best do what he says, because there's only 2 jurisdictions. You've turned your back on me. Right, do what the king says. He'll have to govern you then. And so the king is under orders. If you don't do what the king says, and you'll only be in court because you're not doing what the king says, then he's got every right to take all your stuff and throw you in prison. And most of you will be under district councils. And I've already explained what a district is. Yeah, a district is an offender's jurisdiction whereby the Lord can take property for legal reasons. The definition of district states what it states because of the Ezra quote. Remember, the state says that the Bible is the infallible truth. You are either under God or the crown. The Bible makes this very clear. No man can serve 2 masters. Thank you, and I hope you found my talk interesting.